Recreation and Community Services Commission on May 5th. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioners Bennett. Hahn. Patrick.
Here.
Rottfogel.
Here.
President Sharkey.
Here.
The agenda for the May 5th, 2010 meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the City of Glendale's website on Friday, April 30th, 2010 at 10 a.m. Item 2A under Introductions and Presentations, recognition of Bob McFall.
When we come back to it.
Okay. Do we want to come back to that? Or are we waiting for Bob?
I think.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I may have told him 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
So used to our 3 o'clock
We'll just do it
meeting.
later. Okay. So next we have,
Item 3, Commission Staff Comments.
okay, any comments?
The only comment that I have is, I think we all know, we had the grand opening of the Glendale
And to
Heritage
that.
Garden. If you want to go
Oh,
ahead.
no, please, please.
Which I thought was great, and we had, most of the folks were able to make it. It was a great turnout, beautiful facility. It really came out very nice. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that, and then I know there's also an update on the Path Achieve building towards the end, so I won't say too much about that, but that is moving along nicely, and we're very excited about that as well. So we got our funding approval yesterday, and we had our hearings, and everything is moving along very, very nicely, and I'm sure the staff will give us an update on that, but I wanted to mention those two things.
And I think one of the most exciting things about the Glendale Heritage Park was how excited the kids and the neighbors were. And we drove by a couple of times the next day, and it was filled with happy kids. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go see.
No, finish. I thought you were
Oh,
done.
no, I was going to change the subject. Go.
Okay. Also on the Heritage Park, the one thing that really struck me as I got there early and walked around a little bit was the beautiful jungle gym climbing piece in the middle, or in the children's area. Two things about it. One, it really is quite a kind of an artsy looking piece. It's not your standard jungle gym. But the thing that really struck me was how cool it was, and how that little piece of play equipment, really how we're trying to do as much as we can for the youth. But then I thought about the ARC and how when that comes on board later this year, we're really serving the seniors of the community, and it really kind of made me proud just to think about how well the staff is serving both organizations, both constituencies.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we were talking about a little bit before the meeting, Art from the Ashes. President Sharkey is going to speak at the Rotary Club, Glendale Sunrise Rotary, this Friday morning. She'll be speaking breakfast starts at 7, but she'll be on talking about the Art from the Ashes program at...
Look at GTV6. They just put right up a slide.
That's great. But they'll be talking, they're on the ball. They'll be talking about that, she'll be talking about that Friday morning. We meet at the Hilton. Breakfast is $20 if anyone wants to hear about it.
Great. Thank you for the plug. Yeah, well, I've seen some of the artwork that's created from the blackened 700 acres. It's absolutely amazing. Not only is the park coming out of the ashes, but the artwork is just incredible. So it's going to be almost a 5-week opening of the gallery, but the grand opening is June 19th. So hope to see you there. Anyone else have comments? Okay.
Just a thank you on the staff's part for the commission's support for the park, the Cedar Heritage Park, and taking your Saturdays. And I know, Laurel, you couldn't be there, but you would have been there.
Absolutely.
So we really do want to thank you for your support, all of you.
We're proud. Okay, Iris.
Item 4, Oral Communications.
Okay. Mark Sturdivant.
Thank you. I just ran up the stairs, so I'm a bit out of breath. President Sharkey, members of the Commission, I'm Mark Sturdivant, Senior Administrative Analyst for the Parks Department, the Community Services and Parks Department. And I'm here as a last-second replacement for Colin Bogart. Colin, as you know, is the place grant coordinator. He works for the LA County Bicycle Coalition, and he's here working with us, a collaboration between the city and the Bike Coalition to make Glendale a safer and friendlier place to walk and ride a bike. And he asked me to tell you about an event that we have coming up. You may know that the City Council has declared May as Bike Month in the city of Glendale. And among the many events that are taking place is one that he wanted to make you aware of on May the 22nd. That's a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Starting from the Chess Park on Brand Boulevard, we have the bike ride for the ride to the historic parks of Glendale. And this will be your opportunity to jump on your bike and strap on your helmet and visit a number of Glendale's historic parks with members of the Glendale Historic Society. The ride is going to be about 12 miles. It's going to be slow to moderate pace, so it'll be pretty easy. Multiple stops. Nobody gets left behind. Helmets are mandatory. Rain will cancel the event, and Colin asks that you RSVP to Colin at la-bike.org. And, oh, by the way, there is free parking available in the Orange Street parking structure. So you just come and take your parking ticket, have it stamped at the Chess Park, and when you get done with your ride, you can stay on Brand Boulevard, have lunch, do a little shopping, come back to the parking structure, and it'll be no charge for that. So that's May 22nd, 9 a.m. at the Chess Park for the Glendale Historic Parks History Ride. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, to consent items, yeah.
Yes, item 5, consent items 5A, approval of the minutes of the commission regular meeting held on April 7th, 2010.
Everybody review the minutes? Have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second?
A second.
Okay.
Commissioners Bennett,
Yes.
Khan,
Yes?
Patrick,
Yes.
Rob Fogel,
Yes.
President Sharkey.
Yes.
Item 6A1, under business agenda action items, election of officers. 6A1A, President.
Okay.
I believe you
So
have in
we-
your packet the procedure for
Yes, we turn the
this.
meeting over to,
To Iris.
right.
And the business before the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission is the selection of a new president. I will now entertain nominations for that office. Do we have any nominations for president?
I will nominate Commissioner Khan.
Are there any further nominations for the office of president? We have one nomination for Commissioner Khan. Hearing no further nominations, we will proceed to the roll call. Commissioners Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Khan,
Yes?
Patrick,
Yes.
Rob Fogel,
Yes.
Sharkey.
Yes.
I now declare Commissioner Khan the duly elected president of the Glendale Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission. Mr. President, the task before you now is to open the floor for nominations for secretary.
We switch?
Sure. So are there nominations for the, let me get myself here, for the election of secretary?
I'd like to nominate Steve Rottfogel. Again, can we do that?
Sure.
Are there any other nominations? Could we call the roll then?
Sure. Commissioners Bennett,
Aye.
Khan,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Rob Fogel,
Yes.
Sharkey.
Yes.
I now declare Commissioner Rob Fogel the duly elected secretary of the Glendale Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission.
Okay, before we move on, if we can, I want to take a minute to thank Commissioner Sharkey for acting as the president for the past year. I think you did an outstanding job.
Thank you.
And I think it was very exciting what you did in terms of setting up the Parks Foundation and spearheading that effort. And I also think it's very important. I know you attend a lot of the functions and the events. And I think that's a very neat thing that you did. But I thought you did an outstanding job. So I hope I can do at least part of what you did. But I appreciate it very much, and I think the rest of us on the commission do as well.
Thank you.
Speaking on behalf of staff, we really loved you as the president. We think the world of all of you, and Dottie, we have a great working relationship, so we want to thank you as well.
It's been a pleasure. I hope I've accomplished something in my year as president. That was my goal, and I hope I've made a little bit of difference. I know that the commission and the park staff has made an enormous addition in my life. So, again, thank you, and thank you for your nice comments. And I must say, President Khan has been so supportive with the foundation. He's gone above and beyond, so I want to thank you for that, too.
Thank you.
Okay.
What's next?
Item 6A2, selection of new meeting date and time for commission meetings.
And this is a motion directing staff for the particular meeting date. As you recall, since February 2008, we've been meeting on Wednesdays at 3 o'clock and had enough time typically to go through our agenda, except when we merged with part of the CDH department, of course, we took on a lot more work and a lot more issues. And because of that, last month you requested we look into potential dates for moving the meeting either to another day or earlier times to give you more time. And we've done that, and we've put down several dates for you to consider. Either first option would be the second Thursday of every month at 2:30, or the third Monday of every month at 2:30, or the fourth Thursday of the month at 12:30. And these were the only times that GTV6 had. As you know, we have to televise these meetings. So these three dates are practically the only thing that we could come up with at this point.
Did any of the commissioners, Commissioner Sharkey?
I just wanted to say any of the dates are fine with me. However, Wednesday has always been a very difficult day for me. So, but I can certainly go along with that. But any of the other three dates are fine. The Wednesday would be my last preference.
Okay. Commissioner Rob Fogel?
I think that option 2 gives us the most time, and since that was really our issue, I would like to move that we go with option 2.
Which is every Monday, 2:30.
Every third Monday,
Third Monday of every month,
It-
2:30 to 5.
because that gives us the most time.
What'd you think?
I'm actually fine with any of these times, so whatever works for everybody else is good for me.
Mr.
Yeah,
Blair?
I sort of feel the same way. It looks like the Thursday also gives us 2.5 hours, but
Yeah, the Thursday at 12:30 gives us the same amount of time.
doesn't make any difference to me.
Okay.
You prefer Thursday, then?
No, not necessarily, actually, and any of them are fine with me.
Okay. Then let's go back to Commissioner Rob Fogel. Do you still,
Yeah, because the Thursdays don't work particularly well for me, but the third Monday, because of the amount of time and that it's not in the middle of the day, I really like option 2 the best.
okay. I agree with you in terms of the option 2. I think that makes a lot of sense for us. Is there a motion then?
I move option 2. We need a second.
I second.
Can we get roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Bennett?
Yes.
President Khan?
Yes.
Commissioners Patrick?
Yes.
Rottfogel?
Yes.
Sharkey?
Yes.
Great. What is next?
Item 6B1, under reports for information only, drought-tolerant plants.
And we have a report from Gary Morello. We decided to put him first since he doesn't have a whole lot of time, or he didn't at prior meetings, so he does have a PowerPoint presentation on drought-tolerant plants that I think the community would appreciate in terms of educational material.
Great.
Is there music?
There's no music. He knew not to put music down.
Okay. Well,
Is it different
just got
than
here a
what
few
you
minutes
said?
ago, so
Mrs.
I was a
Revise.
little bit busy there late. I have a few opening comments before we get to the drought-tolerant plants, actually, the presentation. Just a few things that I'd like to let you guys know that before you actually see the presentation, that about 80% of our landscape plants right now are overwatered. This includes the turf. Right now, we could probably water a whole lot less on anything, drought-tolerant or otherwise. So when you listen to the report and listen to the words that I say, you'll be able to use that as part of a guideline. Plants not classified as drought tolerant will actually do very well with less water than they're currently being given now. If you heel in the plants properly, start them off properly with the amount of water that you need, then they'll do with a lot less water. If you give them a lot of water, on the other hand, they'll take a lot of water and they'll require it as they grow. So you can make the plants do whatever you want them to do. That being said, a drought-tolerant plant will only be drought-tolerant after it has rooted into the ground, which means it does need some water. You just can't throw it in the ground, walk away, and say you're good to go. It doesn't work that way. So if we could go ahead and start this here.
Gary, is that true of the plants that we plant in our home too? If, that we probably overwater?
Definitely. Everybody overwaters. Everybody overwaters. They think they want the lush green turf. They want the lush green plants. Plants will adapt, and they don't require that kind of water at all. We could cut our irrigation down, even though we have already done it about 18%, I think, over the course of the last year from the water department statistics. You can probably go another 20%, 25%. You can always add water to it. You can't take water out. So if you've given it enough water to survive, then the plant does really quite well. Again, you also, and I'll be going through some of this, but the disease and pest resistance is lowered with too much water. So it's a great environment for pests and diseases, as well as for, let's say, a turf or a shady area that doesn't require much water. The pests and diseases like that same kind of moist environment also. So it's
Especially
for
if you water.
home. Pardon me?
Especially if you water at night.
Yeah, and the best time to water, since we're saying that right now, is around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The theory is the last sprinkler should go off before the sun comes up, or just as the sun's coming up. That gives especially on your turf, that gives the blades a chance to be wet the least amount of time, and they dry off. And because the water that you want to use is in the soil, not on the leaves. So if the leaves stay wet, you've probably seen it on some of your roses, the powdery mildew that you've got right now. They stay wet longer because it's moist in the mornings. It's not real warm, or hasn't been. The last couple of days are warmer, but you get powdery mildew. You get all kinds of diseases that foster in that kind of environment. So the same thing. Best time to water is between 2:30 and 3:30, so your last valve is going off just as the sun's coming up. Just some general information here. Drought-tolerant landscaping is also known as xeriscaping. And the word xeriscape, if you don't know what that means, there's about 9 different definitions that you can use. I put a couple of them together, and I'm going to read it to you right now so you know what exactly it is. The use of practices and plant materials that minimize water use. The art of landscaping with slow-growing, drought-tolerant plants that either eliminate or greatly reduce the need for irrigation, thereby lowering the need for water. That's out of the compilation of all 9 different definitions. That was the best I came up with. Again, the less need to use fertilizers and pesticides. You're not creating an environment for insects or diseases, so the chance of getting those and having to put down inorganics or organic pesticides is not necessary. And then all plants, no matter what they are, need some form of water. And if you look at the wording, it's drought tolerant, not drought resistant. Tolerant just means that if you got to give it some water to get started, and if you don't give it some water to get started, it's just going to die. It won't make any difference what kind of plant it is. Otherwise, once it's rooted, then you're on your way and you won't have a problem. But it doesn't require no water. It requires a little bit of water to get started. I picked 12 of the most drought-tolerant ones that I could find. Some are maybe common to you, some are not common to you. Another caveat is all California natives are not drought-tolerant, although most are. You can go through. That's why it's called drought-tolerant plants and not California native plants, because some native plants of California require a certain amount of water, actually quite a bit of water. So I picked these out here, the Artissima, and you'll see the pictures of them in just a second. The blanket flower and the lavender are from the Mediterranean and western U.S. The penstemon is from the U.S. and Canada. The salvia is from South America. Kangaroo paw is from Australia. These areas that these plants grow in mimic our area here, our climate here, so they work quite well here. They're planted also in the deserts here. They work quite well. Just so you can get some idea of what they are, there's the Artissima. Most of these that I show you, in fact, almost all of these that I show you will have the same requirements for the most part. They don't mind lack of water in the summertime. They don't mind having poor soils, but they want well-drained soils. They don't want to sit in water. They'll just rot out on you. They'll just be rotting out, and it won't do any good. The blanket flower also, this is to show also that they have nice flowers. You can get drought-tolerant plants that look, quite different and quite pretty. You've got the lavender, which is now getting more popular as we go. Everybody likes lavender, and it really puts up with the heat really well. Again, that one prefers a little more. It does well in most soils, but it has to be well drained again. You can't have water sitting around these plants. They just don't like it. And of course, everybody's pretty much familiar with the California poppy. The penstemon, they all prefer full sun. Some will grow in a little bit of shade, but they won't tolerate very much of it. They like to be in the full sun 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours a day, and they'll flower better. The moss rose, again, average to poor soils, but it has to be well drained. Yarrow, there's several different varieties of yarrow. One is a weed out in the landscape, but this one happens to be the landscape plant, and it also requires a full sun and well drained. They'll do well in average soils, and all of them will tolerate dry conditions. They can be grown, the purple coneflower can be grown in somewhat shade, but it still requires or wants the full sun if it can get it. And the rose and the salvia, the rose itself will not tolerate poorly drained soils again. Will do well on medium textured soils that hold some water, but not, again, well drained. Has to hold the water for a certain amount of time and then drain it through, so it won't be sitting in any kind of water. And the salvia, of course, is a pretty common one around here, and it loves the sun, and it doesn't want the water. The last two are bird of paradise bush and kangaroo paw. If you want to see kangaroo paw in its full splendor, drive down Brand Boulevard from Colorado to Los Feliz, and in the median of the boulevard, you'll see it growing. The flower stalks are about 3 to 4 feet high right now, and each flower looks like a kangaroo paw. That's hence the name. And the bird of paradise bush is completely drought tolerant. It doesn't want any kind of sun at all. It's hard to see that on that picture there. It was the best picture I could come up with, but it has there's 3 different ones. There's a red, a yellow, and an orange, and they're all mixed on the same plant. Some have more red, some have more orange. Looks like the sunset. It is bright orange with yellow middles, or bright middles, red middles with yellow oranges, yellow orange on the outside. It has and it's a quite open and frilly plant. It doesn't require heavy pruning. It can get up to about 6 to 8 feet tall. Some of them stay about 5 to 6 feet tall, but they are completely drought tolerant. They don't want water at all once they've been rooted. Let's see. I wanted to spotlight this turf grass for a minute, since everybody's all excited about turf grass and they want turf grass in their houses. So I just give you a low water usage to the highest usage on the myriad of turf grasses that we have. Bermuda grass being the best, requires very little water, can take low mowing. Anybody who plays golf or whatever knows that most of the greens are Bermuda grass. or they try to be Bermuda. Zoysia and kikuyu grasses, we have that on our median strips, it's kikuyu. Zoysia is a hybrid between mainly a kikuyu grass and a fescue. It has a nice blade, but it doesn't require much water either. And they don't grow very fast, hence because of the lack of water. If you water them more, they will grow more, which means you'll get more green waste, which you don't want. And just a little fun fact here, on a block of 8 average homes, the front lawns have a cooling effect of over 70 tons of air conditioning. When your average home has 3 to 4 ton air conditioning unit, that's a lot of cooling that you get for nothing, for just a little bit of water and for free. So that's just the turf grasses themselves. Doesn't count to take into account the trees or anything else. Tips for growing the successful garden. You have to have a plan. You just can't go out there and start throwing hodgepodge plants out there. It doesn't work that way. You need to go out there and decide where your climate's coming from, how much shade you have, if you have buildings next to you, if you have trees around you, where the sun comes up, where it goes down, which seasons it is. After you've decided what happens at your house or in your landscape, then you can decide what plants you can plant. And again, before they need to be watered before they can withstand the droughts. They need to be well established. And of course, choose the appropriate plant material. If you don't have a high area to grow in, you want to grow the low growing stuff. Kangaroo paw would not be good because the flowers get 4 feet hot. You want to be able to see them. You don't want them to go into the canopy of the tree that's below them or above them or in the other plants that are taller than them. So you want to make sure that you have the right material for the right area. And then, of course, you water and maintain properly. It's always best to plant in the fall, and I know it's not the fall right now, but that doesn't make any difference in Southern California. You can get away with that. We usually don't have too much rain here. That's the reason you plant in the fall. Everything has a chance to root in, so when the spring comes, it can explode and give you a vibrant garden to look at right away in spring. You can plant all the way here through the end of June, because June is usually June gloom, and that gives the plants, the drought-tolerant ones, enough time to root in and have some new roots out there, and then they can survive with a little more water than normal. But your following year, you're free and clear. You would water maybe once every 2 weeks in the summertime, maybe once every 3 weeks in the summertime, and in the wintertime you just shut the irrigation off. If you have a complete drought-tolerant area that you're watering in, again. You don't want to mix the plants. You don't want to put drought tolerant with non-drought tolerant, because you're always going to have to water for the non-drought tolerant, and that's just going to give you more water that you don't want to use. There's no reason to do that. So if you're going to have drought tolerant area, have a complete drought tolerant area. Don't just have one spot and then a spot over here and a spot over there. That doesn't work well that way. It's better to have an area that's all drought tolerant on one valve that can water, and then you can shut that off in the wintertime, and then your other plants that are not drought tolerant can be watered as they should. Again, planning should be based on watering needs and availability and the microclimate in your area. If it's underneath trees or something, even though you can plant drought tolerant underneath trees, plant the same ones that require the same amount of water. Don't try to mix them up. It doesn't work too well. Plant material and the watering efficiency. Mulch. We're using in the city as much mulch as possible. We are making our own. Every time a tree goes down, we make our own mulch. And we use it everywhere possible. It stops weeds from coming up. It saves on the watering. It keeps the ground more moist. If the weeds do develop, you can easily pull them out of a mulch. Turf is a high water use plant, and it's no sense in using turf if it's not an area that people can use for the city. For the homeowner, maybe a little bit different aesthetics views and whatnot, but for the city, we do a constant checking every time for turf that's not being used by the people for anything in particular, just to look at. If it's just to look at and has a few trees in it, then I will take the turf out and put in mulch. It looks just as nice, it's just as clean, and if a few leaves fall in it, nobody can tell the difference because it's mulch. And eventually the mulch breaks down and becomes fertilizer. And if it's trees there, you can run bubblers for the trees if necessary. If not, let the winter rains take care of them. If they're that big, they can survive that. And of course, like I said, not all plants need the same amount of watering. Thus, the grouping is really important. And if you do plant underneath trees, certain ones like oaks do not like water. Do not plant anything underneath an oak that likes water. And there's other ornamentals. So other drought-tolerant plants you can plant underneath an oak that will not require its watering. And because of that, then you don't need to water, and then you'll be damaging the oak tree. So you don't want to do that. Okay, a couple types of irrigation. Probably familiar with the spray and then the rotor. Those are the two that we mainly use for turf. They can be used for a few other things, but mainly for turf. Spray puts out an awful lot of water. The rotor puts out not as much water, but it covers a larger area. So if you do have turf, you probably have to use one of those two types of irrigation. The other type would be the drip. And there's several different types. There's micro sprays. There's small little emitters that drip out 2 gallons an hour. There's other ones with the spaghetti tubing that have the micro spray on it. There's the one on the left-hand side that's got the long tube running that's probably every 12 inches is a hole, and it diffuses out slowly, so you can water underground. The biggest problem with drip is if it's below ground and it breaks, it becomes a little hard to repair because you don't know it's broken until the plant that's right above it dies. And that becomes kind of a problem. But you can put it right at ground level, and if it's right at ground level, then you're much better off. They're black tubing, you don't see it. And once the plants grow over the top of it, then they're covered. So you're in good shape there. It doesn't hurt that at all. That's pretty much what I've got. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I have a question.
Yeah, it is. Thank you very much for the report. It's a great report.
That was a great
Questions?
report. I just have, with the tubing, with rats, is there a problem?
Not particularly, unless you
Okay.
have a rabbit problem or a rat problem at your house, and you have a large ground cover area that they hide in, or they're
Oh, I
coming
see.
over from something else.
Okay.
You can always wrap it or cover it. If you put it below ground, just an inch or so below ground, that's enough, because they're not going to dig it up and look for it. If they come across it, you'll find it. And then drip irrigation needs to be checked probably more often than sprays because of that particular problem.
Thanks. That was a great report. Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Good.
Mr. Bennett?
Hopefully, after seeing this, people are going to think a lot more seriously about drought-tolerant plants. One issue I think that may come up is the city has some sort of ruling about how much your land has to be green versus how much it isn't. I'm not quite sure what that ruling is, but if you know, it might be helpful, or at least about what it is.
It's part of the planning's department, and they're revamping, or they're going through it and looking at it right now. That's why you've seen the artificial turf plots out in the plaza. They're looking at maybe using that, and maybe allowing that to happen in your front yard. I'm a proponent of real grass. Like I told you, it's highly more desirable, I believe, than artificial turf is, as far as cleaning the air and giving you oxygen and cleaning the water that comes through it. Although there are applications for artificial turf, no doubt about it. But I think it's 75% of your front lawn has to be planted in live. And drought tolerant or otherwise, there are ornamental grasses that get 3 to 4 feet tall that get cut down once a year. There are other plants that you can take your whole lawn area if you wanted to remove it out and put these other plants in there. It's still planted. It's still plants live, and if you put mulch underneath it, that's almost live stuff. That came from live. So
Okay, so mulch might count as live.
mulch won't count as live, but the plants planted and the mulch around them, then it's a bed. And instead of your front yard being 60% lawn and 40% shrubs, it's 85 or 90% lawn or shrubs, and you just have mulch as you're covering your dirt. And as the plants get bigger, if you start off with small plants, then it becomes, you've planted over 75% of your lawn or your front yard in live stuff.
Questions?
Since we're sort of in the process of doing some of this, there's one other thing on irrigation that is helpful.
Yes.
You can get a smart water dispenser, so to speak, where you actually have a weather sensor that remotely tells your box what the sun is, what the humidity is, and I think eventually can really save you some money.
There are a myriad of controllers out there. They're coming out with more and more user-friendly ones for that you just mentioned. Yeah, they tap into a weather station. The weather station that's around this area is at JPL.
Well, they have your own. I mean,
Some of them you can dial in and put a history into them. So the history of the last year, they know, the box knows what you've used and historically, and will adjust your clock accordingly. You can also have a rain sensor out there, so when the rain hits that sensor, it shuts it off automatically. There are several different ways you can do that, but the irrigation controller is about the only way to go. Some kind of one, anyway.
Well, I appreciate the presentation. It always helps. We always talk about drought-tolerant plants, as if we're all supposed to know what that means. So, truly, today we learned what that means. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What it would have been like with music, though.
It would have been good.
Would have been interesting.
Can we go back, if you don't mind? I see Mr. McFall is here. If we go back to 2A for introductions and presentations for recognition of Bob McFall.
Certainly.
Yes, and I'd like to do this, and I know Bob does not want to get embarrassed. He doesn't want to be embarrassed. But as you all know, Bob was at one point the director of Parks and Recreation here. We have a brief PowerPoint presentation with some old photos, not to embarrass you. But what I'd like to do is at least read part of his background or some of his background that we have. And I know there's going to be a number of other events that people can come out and honor Bob, but we wanted to do something here, at least at this point. And we thought about how do you honor a man who's given 30 years to the city and who's always
33.
33 plus. Who's counting?
Yeah, he's counting.
33 plus years, and he's always been a giving person, cares deeply about people and the environment. And I think we have a nice way of honoring him, and we'll save that maybe for the end. And if you'll just allow me,
Please.
I can read a page of his background for people who don't know Bob. Bob was born and raised in Southern California, coming from Temple City, California, and attended the San Gabriel School District. While attending college at the Cal State Polytechnical University in Pomona, Bob first worked for the city of Glendale from 1973 until 1975 as an administrative intern in the Parks and Recreation Division. He obtained his Bachelor of Science degree in Parks Administration in 1975. After graduation, Bob briefly worked for the Claremont Men's College and the City of Downey, returning to Glendale in 1977 as the City of Glendale's Park Superintendent. He continued in this position until 1986, when he became Director of Parks and Recreation. While in Parks and Recreation, he was instrumental in founding the Pacific Southwest Maintenance Management School, taught at Glendale Community College, and began his career-long involvement of volunteering with community organizations. By the way, the Southwest Management Maintenance School still exists, and they've gotten much bigger, I think, at this point. And we've had a number of our folks go through that. In fact, Coco, I think, is a board member at this point, if not president. Huh? Board of Regents, okay. Expressing an interest in moving into general government, Bob was recruited for his current position of Assistant City Manager in 1987. In this capacity, Bob serves as the Chief Operating Officer of the city and oversees the general operations of all 15 city departments. Bob is involved in all aspects of city employee relations programs, serves as the Administrative Hearing Officer for personnel grievances and appeals, and serves as a trainer in the Glendale University program. Additionally, Bob supervises the city's internal audit unit, community relations program, local cable broadcast unit, and the city's major capital improvement projects. He coordinates the annual budget process and facilitates special organizational studies, and is liaison to other community and government agencies. In a word, Bob simply loves the role he has been able to play and feels blessed with his career in Glendale. Bob serves on a variety of community boards and is involved in a number of volunteer efforts, currently including the Glendale Chamber of Commerce, Glendale Ed Foundation, PATH, Achieve Homeless Center, where he is also guest chef each month. And I've had the pleasure of serving breakfast with Bob, and it is really an enriching experience. The Relay for Life, the Glendale Character and Ethics Project, and Glendale Human Relations Committee. He serves as an instructor for Leadership Glendale, and earlier in his career with the city, Bob was involved in the annual Pasadena Tournament of Roses Parade, which I'd like for him to tell you about, because back then they used to drive the floats, including driving the Glendale float for 8 years. He uses his photography hobby to often serve as the unofficial photographer for various community events. Bob is married to a beautiful wife, Patty, and together they have 4 children. He is grandfather to Jedediah and Hope. Both of Bob's children went through Glendale school systems and are actively engaged in their careers. And some of Bob's hobbies are adventures, photography, computers, old cameras, motorcycle touring, travel, classic cars. You know, Bob and I talk a lot about classic cars, camping, skiing, outdoor activities, reading. He does a tremendous amount. And I have to tell you, my experience with Bob was the first City of Glendale employee that I met. And I'm really proud to call him a friend. He is truly a unique individual. So again, we thought, how do we honor Bob? And we went back to, the Duke-Majan Wilderness Park, where it took a lot of courage on Bob's part to save an old heritage oak tree. And against all other argument, I think you were the lone voice to save that tree. Everybody else was advocating for burning the entire park. And as such, before we do that, can we go through some of the PowerPoint, just to show some brief pictures about. So tribute to Bob's years of services to the Parks and Recreation Department, which no longer is. The Parks and Recreation Community Services Department, which no longer is. Now it's the Community Services and Parks Department. There's Bob.
Look at that, huh?
I think that almost looks like a drug cartel picture. But there's Bob with Henry Argonia, the former Parks Director.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is the Pacific Community Center opening. Although they all look somber, but
This is not a funeral.
you recognize the gentleman in the back. That's Leaf, isn't it? Yeah. This is the Centennial, the City Centennial event, where we all worked together. It was a great event. Yeah. This is the Cedar Heritage Park groundbreaking. And he has attended almost all of our groundbreakings and all of our dedications. This is Bob Anello, again, Rec Leaders for a Day, which I'm sure you enjoyed, Bob.
Last time I had it.
Yes, this is where you took that little kid's money, I think. There's the kid. He no longer has his shirt.
Oh, that's a great.
And this is the oak tree. So in recognition of that, what we want to do is we are going to name that oak tree after Bob, and we will be putting a plaque there. It is now going to be known as the McFall Oak. And we do have it in a certificate, but we're going to hold an event out there before he leaves for Ojai with the plaque, and invite his family and everyone else out there for that ceremony. So, Bob, thank you very much. You truly are a very good friend, and I hate to see him go.
Oh, no.
I won't be gone real far. Well, I am beyond touched on that. George, that was very kind. I'm truly touched with that. You could take that first picture out, though. There are some others that are really good. You had good taste, not good.
That was Brittany who put those pictures up, so it's great.
Well, that oak tree was it is quite a story, because in the heat of the moment of the fire department just going to the county and working with the state fire officials, and of course they have a let it burn kind of a program, and lots of debate back and forth, and decisions are literally being made in the heat of the moment. And sitting in the bunker in the EOC and having the fire chief and one of the battalion chiefs, who was a commander for this incident, come back in and say, we've just come back from the command center, the statewide command center, the regional command center, and the decision is that we're going to burn Duke-Majan Park. We're going to backfire it, and we're going to actually burn it. It's the best way to protect the houses. It's a part. And I got to tell you, tears came to my eyes instantly, and I said, we just can't do that. And it wasn't even just about that particular oak tree. It was It was this community worked so hard to raise money and to protect the entirety of that site, and that was going to be a housing development in there. It used to be called Inter Valley Ranch, and just the thought of us deliberately going in and somehow not doing our best to save that 600 acres, it was incomprehensible to me. And my arguments, I mean, they were empathetic, but the policies and all those things. And I said, what about the oak tree? I mean, you just have no idea of the significance of the oak tree. And I have to say that the incident commander in particular said, I think you got a point there on that one. Maybe we can save that one tree. And in the middle of all the fires going on and everything, it's one thing. I mean, I just had an idea about it. On the other hand, in the middle of all the fires and everything, they dispatched a hand crew up there, and they cut the area out around that tree so that as everything burnt up to it, it protected the oak tree. And they actually ended up doing a T-shirt commemorating the saving of that oak tree, and it actually became significant to the fire department that at least something had been saved of it.
Well, it does represent Duke-Majan Park. Anytime
Yes.
we have pictures of it, that is in all of them.
Go ahead.
I say, if there's anything symbolic of Duke-Majan now, it's that tree.
Well, that's the first, after the station fire, I called George, the first or second, I said, is the oak tree okay? Is the barn okay? And that was the first thing I thought of, was that oak tree.
That's what many
Thank
people
you.
do. I mean, I think for folks who haven't actually spent time at Duke-Majan, I don't think they really realize how significant of a site that is. And it will be beautiful.
It is. Oh, yeah.
It has its own
It already
beauty,
is.
regenerating.
Already coming back, so.
Well, not to spin it, George really surprised me with this the other day, and I just want to say I truly appreciate this. My finest 10 years with the city was my first 10 years in Parks and Recreation, and it will always be Parks and Recreation, too. That name belongs in the title, and only because it's my background, Parks belongs first. It just rolls off your tongue better, Parks and
We are still that commission.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
George, you look like you have an incredible commission. They must be
They are wonderful.
terrific to work
They are.
with. But
Well,
I've enjoyed my career here, and I sure have enjoyed the Parks and Recreation Department.
I also wanted to thank Bob for the photo documentary, which will be historic, of Rockhaven, our soon-to-be newest park, and you will be such a part of that forever. Bob is just an incredible photographer, and I look forward to his keen eye and camera in the future ahead with more of his. Are you still going to be at the Montrose Art Festival showing off?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, and his wife Patty with her sculptures.
Well, I kept saying to Bob, stop making those photos look so good, because it doesn't really look that good, and people are going to expect it. And it didn't. The pictures made it look wonderful. But,
It is wonderful.
Yeah. But it needs work, but it's still, with the pictures, he really made it look good.
I can't imagine the city without you, but all the best.
Thank you.
Please.
Bob, I just want to wish you all the best. I have the opportunity of not only working with Bob in volunteering, but also we worked together for many, many years as department heads, and then as Bob being assistant city manager and myself a department head. You were great to work with. You're really going to be missed. And some of my favorite memories of Bob are him telling us about the things that used to happen in Parks and Rec in the early days.
He was a toddler.
Yes, we were both toddlers, thank you.
And I'm so grateful those stories are staying with you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your integrity and your honor.
You're leaving, I can't blackmail you anymore.
Were the guys rafting under your direction?
Don't even bring that up. Yeah.
But I certainly wish you all the best and look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. I will.
I can't add much to what's already been said, except that I've always found you to have a sharp ear, and whenever I've asked you for advice and for your unique point of view has really helped me a lot in the things I've done.
Appreciate that. We didn't really get to know each other.
Well, photographer. I love photography.
Oh, good.
Are you a Photoshop person? Film?
I'm as they call it, through the lens photographer. So yes, I do everything digital, and I crop and I'll make little adjustments. But I'm a through the lens photographer.
Okay. I love photography.
Well, I just wanted to say I serve actually with Bob on the Path Achieve Glendale board. And it was interesting because we've known each other for years, but not very well. We work on different things. And I got to know Bob a little bit more. And it was kind of interesting because that board, which is a great board to be on, everyone will say, well, how did you get recruited to that board? And almost everybody on that board will say, Bob McFall had me do it. Bob McFall had me do it. And so it's not just his presence, but him bringing people to help out in the community. And you've been outstanding on the board. I hope that you still stick around, and give us input and give us advice. And we're really going to miss you as a city person, but we hope to see you as a non-city person after you retire. Thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that greatly. And I'm going to follow in Laurel's path and continue working in the community.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is what the plaque is going to say when we get out
gosh.
there. So.
Wow, that's just spectacular. Sure.
What days do you cook, or when do you cook?
Thursdays.
Third Thursday. Okay. Well, I'm there on Wednesdays.
Thank you. Thank you.
Love you.
Thanks.
If you want the negatives, Parks Foundation.
Right. He knows.
That's right.
That's right.
Exactly. Thanks. So if we can go back to our business agenda.
Ooh, certainly. Item 6B2, monthly activity reports. At A, we have park services.
Actually, I think Gary did the park services, so we should go on the B.
So that's 6B.
Recreation.
Okay.
6B2B, recreation and community services.
How do you follow Bob McFall? Anyway, with the Recreation Community Services report. This month, one of the highlights of this month's report, which some of you commissioners had mentioned you saw this morning's paper, the news press highlighted our contract class report. One of the unique things to note is that we recently were one of many cities who the IRS had looked at our contract class program and was questioning whether or not our contract class instructors should be classified as contractual instructors or employees. And during that process, Glendale and several other cities converted these instructors into employees. So these individuals that teach our classes, unless they teach a class under the auspices of a bona fide business license, are now employees, hourly employees of the city. So one of the reasons that you see that our number of classes that we offered this season was lower, that is because we did lose some instructors in this conversion process. However, interestingly enough, one of the things that we also alternatively saw was that we had an increase in the number of individuals who registered for those classes. One of the things that my staff feel, was the cause of this is because when we converted these instructors to employees, it essentially made our internal costs go up. So we had to raise the level of minimum registrants for each class. Hence, the folks teaching the classes had to go out and really drum up that additional business to try to get the word out, take this class, it's a great new class, to try to beef up business. And we really firmly believe that that's one of the main reasons why you see this jump in registrations, because they are now more actively out there pursuing getting individuals to register for classes, because if we don't meet the minimum number of registrations, then the class ultimately gets canceled, and therefore they don't get paid to work. So it's kind of been a unique and interesting scenario to take a look at over the course of the last 6 months. Been through a number of hurdles of how do we, continue to be able to pay them the same way that we paid them in the past. But So we finally got them all converted, and things are moving forward. So we will continue to watch this program and watch the trends and make sure that we are still being able to cover our expenses internally and hopefully continue to see some profit generation there.
What effect has the fact that they're employees and that we have now more people in the classes, what effect has that had on our profit, do we know?
Commissioner Rothvogel, well, currently, it's almost a little too early for us to tell because it's really only been the one session that we've had the classes in, but we have seen a slight increase in our revenue because of the higher numbers of registration. But it's not significant enough to where it is, a large enough increase to note that, oh, good, we're going to be on the safe side. We're still keeping our revenue estimates on the fairly conservative side. And because these are employees now, we have, additional trainings that we must send them to, and we have to pay them to attend those trainings. So our internal costs have also gone up simultaneously. So again, as we see these next few sessions roll out, we'll have a little bit better picture as to where we will end up on our bottom line.
And why would some of the instructors decide not to instruct because they had to become employees?
Yeah, it was a number of different reasons. Some folks just didn't want to, they wanted to have more flexibility in the class that they offered or the type of programming that they did. They didn't want to have to be, some of the excuses were silly, to be locked into a schedule, yet they already created essentially the schedule to begin with. Some folks just didn't like the idea of working for city government. And then on the flip side, there were some folks that thought, oh, well, this actually makes me feel a little bit more secure as an employee, that the city will now aid me in getting these classes out there to the public. So it was a mixed batch of feelings. Oddly enough, there were a few folks that when they learned that they had to go through a more stringent background screening, that, they just said, you know what, not for me.
I can relate to that.
One of the other potential impacts is the federal government's health plan, and I'm not sure, we may have to cover these folks as well, so it may end up costing us some more money to do that. So we'll see how that all shakes out in the analysis.
Aside from that, everything else in the report is status quo. We've noted our monthly permanent revenue for March in our picnic and clubhouse facilities. And the Civic Auditorium, while it is still relatively at the same profit point as we were in last fiscal year, we still continue to keep our eye on the Civic. In fact, one of the things that George had us get together and do a little thinking outside of the box for the Civic Auditorium and explore some new opportunities. And so we are now going to pursue the potential of having some active sports potentially on the upper level of the Civic Auditorium. We have a meeting next week to discuss with staff the potential for having basketball. We have quite a number of individuals asking for our Pacific and the Maple Park gymnasium for gym time, and the Civic having the nice wood floor there would lend rather nicely to basketball. And we weighed out the profit margin of basketball versus indoor soccer. We'll also have them looking at trying to connect with some of the schools to see if they have any gymnastics meets or volleyball, any type of other indoor sport, whether it's a wrestling tournament, to try to promote other uses of the Civic Auditorium. So we're exploring a number of other options to see what we can do to think outside the box and increase some of those revenues there.
Sounds like a great idea. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Item 6B2C, CIP projects.
Favor.
Commissioner Khan, members of the commission, I think we'll go right to Lila for her presentation on Cedar.
Great.
Yeah, when
Or
we have-
Glendale Heritage. Sorry?
Sorry, I was going to call out the
Did you
item.
want the
Oh,
keyboard?
I'm sorry. Then I can give you a brief update if there's time and if you'd like to hear it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at 6B2C1, it's Cedar Heritage Garden.
Good afternoon, Commissioner President Khan and Commissioners. Lila Vitar, I'd like to congratulate you on the appointment.
Thank you.
Finally, Glendale Heritage Garden is completed, and what I'd like to do is share some picture with you of the completed projects and also some photos of the dedication. Our dedication was May 1st. It was a beautiful Saturday, and neighbors came out, and you'll see some of the photos. Do you turn down the light or no? Okay. This is the completed bungalow. Took some photos of the interior of the bungalow. Again, we did a combination of restoration and renovation for the bungalow.
Lila, just for people who may be watching this at home, this is a usable space for the youth outreach program, so the kids actually are using this space.
Yes,
It's important for people to know.
It is for the local teenage kids and their families to come, and the staff help them with counseling. Probably Brittany, if she likes to add something to that.
Sure. It's for our Youth and Family Services program, as George and Lila mentioned. Family counseling, referral services. We also have tutoring that takes place through Glendale College of high school students at this facility, and we also employ one of our Club Maple participants at the site as well. So the Youth and Family Services and the Therapeutic Recreation Program offices are located at this facility.
So the teenager, though, they can actually even come there and just hang out and do their homework there if they need to, if they need a place to get away. So.
I think one of the other nice things, too, that's a partnership with Lila and our CIP staff and Gary, is that the kids, as part of their community service for school, have offered to help take care of the benches and some of the plants in
the garden,
the planters in the front of the house. So it's a nice working relationship that we have there.
Okay, for folks at home, if you're interested in drought-tolerant planting, please come and visit the garden, because it's definitely a showcase for drought-tolerant planting. And the garden is located at 141 South Cedar. This is some views if you walk through the garden. Looking at the trellis area. Entrance from Harvard. This is a sculpture fountain done by a local artist, Ron Picard, and his associate, Sandy McDaniel. The photo that you see on the left is yarrow that Gary talked about. And the photo on the left is sage, and they both are drought-tolerant planting. This is a space net play structure by Landscape Structure, and it's becoming the most popular item in the garden. These photos were taken before the garden was opened. This is also another drought-tolerant plant that you'll see a lot of in the garden. We took some night photos too for you. This is the garden at night. A lot of accent lighting and general lighting. Here's some photos of the dedication. Mayor Pro Tem Dave Weaver addressed the crowd. Here's our speaker, ex-President Sharkey emceed the program. Ribbon cutting. I wonder what the conversation is.
I think it was about the fountain.
Yes.
Oh, it sounded.
Seem to recall a joke somewhere.
That's what it was.
the newspaper was there, and the article was written in the paper on the garden. Also, some of the youth staff volunteered, actually, the youth kids around the area volunteered for the event. This is a Flo Earth Camp. She's the original owner of the property. And she came to the event. She was very excited, and I'm hoping to sit down with her and get the history on the property. Apparently, there were main owners, her friend, and before she passes away, she didn't have any family. She sold it to her, and then she owned it before she turned it to the policeman, who immediately sold it to the city. And we had a tour with the designer Melinda Taylor, who gave a nice tour of the garden. We also had an event on Monday, Glendale Historical Society, and we had a tour of the garden and the bungalow, and then there was a lecture about craftsman architecture in Glendale. We had some little kids to grandpas to all different ages in the garden.
His shoe.
Thank you.
Great.
Actually, that's a girl.
Good job. Thank you. That was excellent.
It's not, yeah, I just realized that. That was cute.
Did we have any comments, or move on to the next one? Questions, comments? Thank you very much.
It's a masterpiece.
Oh, I did have one question. What about security for the building at night? How is that being handled?
Boy, I know we do have an alarm system inside, but we are going to have to talk about potential cameras outside if things start getting a little rough out there. We're hoping the community keeps an eye on it and takes pride in it, as Commissioner Sharkey asked them to do. But if we do see a lot of vandalism, we're going to be installing cameras. Right now, we're looking at cameras for a lot of the parks. Our IS department is looking at systems that can actually hold the data. We have to hold data for 2 years. And so that's just the sticking point at this point. But once we get beyond that, we'll be installing cameras in most of our parks.
And where does that feed go back to? Is it live and someone watching it, or how does
It's
it work?
potentially over at the police department, and then stored over, I think the company's in Arizona, so that the data will be stored in a company out in Arizona.
Thank you.
Item 6B2D, CDBG homeless programs.
I'll turn this over to Jess Duran, Assistant Director.
Yes, President Khan, members of the Commission, the only thing we'd like to report on for this month is an update on a major project that our department is working on in partnership with Path Achieve Glendale, and that is the development of an acquisition and rehabilitation project for a new homeless access center and emergency shelter. We did have a meeting with a joint meeting with the City Council and the Housing Authority yesterday, and recommended a resolution to authorize the city manager to submit a loan application to the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development in the amount of $2 million with a 10-year repayment term. And that loan application was approved by the City Council, so it is being submitted to HUD. In the meantime, HUD will we have very good indications from the HUD officials that the loan will be approved. It stands a very good chance of approval, but it will take some time. It'll take about 3 to 4 months. In the meantime, in order to be able to facilitate the closing of the escrow, because the property is in escrow, we also talked to the City Council and Housing Authority about the city providing a bridge loan in order to consummate the acquisition and begin the rehabilitation work. So we're currently exploring the feasibility of doing that with HUD. HUD has to approve that because we don't want that bridge loan to impede the eligibility of HUD dispersing the loan funds, because theoretically we're requesting the loan because we have no other avenues to get money for the project. So we do need HUD's approval on the bridge loans. So we're working towards that. But the project location is on the corner of Tyburn and Gardena in Glendale. It's across the way from the railroad right-of-way on the border of LA City. It's an 8,000 square foot corner lot with an 8,200 and some odd square foot building, upon which the Path to Achieve Glendale Board plans to add another 2,700 square feet to expand services and to be able to provide separation in the sleeping quarters between the men and the women and children. So we've received strong support from the City Council and the Housing Authority. So we had a very successful meeting yesterday. Commissioner Khan is here, and he can speak on behalf of the Path to Achieve Board. But we're very excited about the project. So it's on its way.
Great. Any comments? Nope. Anything else?
When we talked about separation between, didn't I see a picture of something that people are kind of have privacy in the individual?
But to add to what Mr. Duran said, basically what it was to get some more square footage for the building so that there's two components, an access center and then the emergency shelter. The additional square footage will allow case managers to have a little bit more privacy when they're talking with clients, which is nice. And then the second thing is to have where, as mentioned, the children, women, and men in different areas, sleeping in different areas, because right now it's all collectively together.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I do too. Great. Thank you very much. Anything else? I think that's it. So we will, did you have anything, George? Okay, thank you.
Item 7, written communications.
Written communications, thank you. Do we have any written communications?
I don't believe we do. No.
Great. Then we'll go to item 8, which is adjournment.
Now, is the next
We are
meeting-
adjourned.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Before you do that, is the next meeting going to be the third Monday of this month, or are we going to go, or 6 weeks from now?
Oh, 6 weeks from now.
For the commission. And the legal noticing for the meeting is the 72-hour Brown Act notice. So long as it is properly noticed, the next meeting can be when it would be ordinarily scheduled, which is now at a new date and time. So long as that's properly noticed pursuant to the Brown Act, you can have your next meeting in a month from now on your new date and time, or approximately a month from now. I don't know whether it's 5 weeks or...
Well, it's either 2 weeks or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, what it says monthly in the municipal code.
Yeah.
And so technically we've met for this month.
You have already met for this month.
Why don't we do it in 6 weeks if
Well,
you don't
here's
mind?
what it says. It says at 260070 that the Parks, Recreation, Community Services Commission shall meet in regular session at least once a month at a time and place selected by vote of its members.
Okay.
So you can meet more than once. So if you did choose, if you've got a heavy agenda and chose to meet in a couple of weeks as opposed to,
Right.
so at least,
I mean, I
Once a month.
have no preference either way, but I think that 6 weeks is an awful long time to...
Well, why don't we see what type of agenda items we can come up with, and I'll let you know. I'll talk to the president.
Well, is it your preference? Is there a preference, or is it? We heard what it said. It seems like we have flexibility as long as we've met this month.
I just don't know if we'll have enough agenda items to bring
2 weeks
together.
does not seem like very much.
Right.
It's going to take you a few
And I don't wanna
days
waste your
to get
time.
ready.
Okay.
Then you only have 1 week.
Yeah.
Well,
So we should plan on...
yeah. Why don't we plan on, if it's okay with the rest of the commission, that we would meet then in 6 weeks, as long as that meets the law requirements.
yes, it's at least once a month, and then the noticing is a Brown Act 72-hour noticing, so long as
Okay.
it's properly noticed.
So thank you. So then our next meeting would be in 6 weeks.
Okay.
Great. Anything else? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.